Imagine standing on the roof of a skyscraper. Now imagine that skyscraper is tilting 30 degrees to the left, then 30 degrees to the right every 10 seconds. The wind is screaming at 100 miles per hour, a sound so loud it vibrates in your chest and bursts your eardrums. It is pitch black, the only light coming from the jagged strobe of horizontal lightning striking the water around you. You are soaking wet, freezing cold, your hands are numb, and you are holding a heavy steel chain covered in grease. And right in front of you, a 30-ton fighter jet worth $70 million is starting to slide toward the edge of the abyss. This is not a nightmare. This is a Tuesday night for the deck crew of a United States Navy aircraft carrier in the North Atlantic. We call them floating cities, but that is a comforting lie we tell ourselves. A city doesn't have to fight the ocean for its survival every single day. A city doesn't have $5 billion of high explosives and delicate electronics parked on its streets during a hurricane. When a Category 5 storm hits an aircraft carrier, the laws of physics change. Steel bends. Massive waves, known to sailors as green water, smash over the flight deck, crushing anything in their path with the force of a freight train. And in the middle of this chaos, a team of 20-year-old kids has to perform a miracle. Keep 64 aircraft from turning into a pile of burning scrap metal at the bottom of the sea. In July 2022, the USS Harry S. Truman faced this reality. A sudden squall, a freak wave, and in seconds an F-18 Super Hornet was ripped from its chains and thrown into the Mediterranean like a toy. It sank 9,000 feet. The Navy doesn't like to talk about it, but today we will. We are going to take you inside the storm. We will break down the heavy weather protocols that turn a warship into a sealed fortress. We will look at the terrifying engineering of the storm bow. We will descend into the engine room to meet the snipes who keep the screws turning when the world is upside down. And we will answer the question, when the ocean decides to kill a 100,000-ton ship, how does the crew fight back? To understand the danger, you first have to understand the money. On the deck of a Nimitz-class carrier, you are looking at a parking lot worth more than the GDP of a small nation. The F-35C Lightning II costs over $100 million. The E-2D Hawkeye, the flying radar dish, costs $170 million. The F/A-18 Super Hornet is a bargain at $70 million, total value exposed to the elements, over $5 billion. But money isn't the only thing at stake, it's combat readiness. If a carrier loses its air wing in a storm, it becomes useless. It creates a mission kill. It becomes just a floating airport with no planes, a massive target drifting in the sea. The enemy here isn't a missile or a submarine, it is kinetic energy. A hurricane wave can weigh thousands of tons. When it hits the hull, it imparts energy that has to go somewhere. The ship absorbs it, it moves. A roll is side-to-side movement. A pitch is front to back like a seesaw. A heave is straight up and down. In a bad storm, the carrier does all three at once. It's called corkscrewing. For a jet parked on the deck, this is lethal. Gravity wants to pull the jet downhill. Friction wants to keep it in place. When the ship rolls 30 degrees to the port side, gravity wins. The rubber tires lose their grip on the non-skid, the sandpaper-like surface of the deck. The jet starts to slide if it hits another jet. That's a crunch, millions in damage and months of repairs. If it hits the edge, it goes into the drink, the ocean. To stop this, the Navy relies on a piece of technology that hasn't changed much since World War II, the chain. Meet the blue shirts. These are the aircraft handlers. They are the manual labor of the flight deck, the grunts of the aviation world. And when the captain announces Condition I, the highest level of storm readiness, their hell begins. They have to secure every single aircraft. A standard tie-down chain weighs roughly 12 to 15 pounds. It is made of forged high-tensile steel. It has a hook on one end and a tensioning device on the other. On a calm day, a jet needs 6 chains. This is normal weather tie-down. In a storm, they need 18, 20, sometimes 24 chains per aircraft. Do the math, 60 aircraft, 20 chains each. That is 1,200 chains. That is 18,000 pounds of steel that has to be hauled by hand across a slippery oil-slicked deck in gale-force winds that can knock a man off his feet. The deck itself is a grid. It is covered in paydies, star-shaped holes welded into the steel deck plates. There are thousands of them. The blue shirt has to crawl under the belly of the F-18. It is dark. Hydraulic fluid and oil are dripping on him. The wind is screaming. He hooks the chain to the aircraft's tie-down ring. He hooks the other end to the paydies. Then comes the hard part, tension. A loose chain is worse than no chain. If there is slack, the jet will jerk when the ship rolls. This shock load can snap the steel link instantly. The chain whips through the air like a bullet. If it hits a leg, it breaks the bone. If it hits a head, it kills. So the blue shirts use a tension bar to crank it tight. They check it. Then a supervisor checks it. Then the handler checks it. It is a triple redundant system built on sweat and paranoia. But the chains are just the beginning. The aircraft themselves have to be prepared. The wings are folded. An F-18 has hinges in its wings to save space. In a storm, these are folded up and locked with hydraulic pins. But can the pins hold against a 100-knot wind gust? Mechanics have to install external wing fold struts, physical metal bars that lock the wings in place so they don't flap or snap off. The canopies, the glass cockpits, are taped and covered. If a wave hits the canopy, the glass can shatter, flooding the cockpit with salt water. Salt water destroys avionics instantly. A single wave inside the cockpit writes off a $70 million jet, so the crews seal them tight. They cover the engines with intake plugs to stop water from drowning the turbines. It is like battening down the hatches on a house, but the house is a weapon of war. While the blue shirts are fighting on the roof, the hangar deck crew is playing the highest stakes game of Tetris in history. The hangar bay is the garage. It is safer than the flight deck, but it is finite. It can't fit everyone. The air boss, sitting high above the deck in primary flight control, has to make a Sophie's choice which planes get saved. Usually the most expensive assets go down first. The F-35s. The delicate E-2 Hawkeyes with their massive radar dishes. They use the 4 massive elevators to lower them, but operating an elevator in a storm is terrifying. The elevator is an open platform hanging off the side of the ship. It has no walls. If the ship rolls while the elevator is moving, the jet on the platform wants to roll off. Handlers have to use Tilly tractors and manual bravery to keep the jet centered. They use chocks, wooden blocks, and temporary chains just for the 10-second ride down. Once inside the hangar, they pack them wingtip to wingtip. They fold the wings, they overlap the tails, they put them so close you can't walk between them. Why? To fit as many as possible. But this creates a new danger: fire. If a fire starts in a packed hangar during a storm, you can't get to it. The fire trucks can't maneuver, the hoses can't reach, so the hangar bay is divided by massive steel doors, conflagration stations. In an emergency, these doors slam shut, chopping the hangar into airtight boxes. But during the storm prep, the doors are open. The crew is sprinting. The Ouija board, the scale model of the deck located in flight deck control, is being updated every second. The handler moves little plastic airplanes around the board. It looks like a game, but it is the brain of the ship. Spot 3 is clear. Bring down aircraft 404. It is a race against the weather radar. If the storm hits before the hangar is packed, the elevator operations have to stop. The elevators are the weak point of the ship's hull. In a massive storm, waves can crash into the elevator openings. To prevent flooding, the elevators are brought up to the flight deck level and locked in place, sealing the roof. The ship becomes a steel cocoon. The aircraft are secured. Now the ship itself has to survive. A Nimitz-class carrier is 100,000 tons. You might think it is too big to sink. You would be wrong. The ocean is stronger than steel. If a carrier takes waves on the beam, the side, it can roll dangerously. If the roll exceeds a certain degree, the elevators can jam. The fuel pipes can rupture. The nuclear reactors can automatically shut down for safety. If the reactors shut down in a hurricane, the ship loses power. It loses steering. It turns broadside to the waves. That is the nightmare scenario. To prevent this, the captain heads into the wind. By pointing the sharp bow directly into the waves, the ship cuts through them instead of rolling over them. But this means the bow takes a beating. Imagine a 40-foot wave crashing over the front of the ship. The spray hits the bridge windows 100 feet in the air. The sound is like a car crash over and over again. The carrier has a secret weapon, the hull shape. Below the waterline, the hull is wide and flat to provide stability. But deep inside, there are active stabilization systems. Massive rudders and, on newer ships, gyroscopic controls that help dampen the roll. But let's go deeper. Let's go down to the snipes. These are the engineers who work below the waterline. While the pilots are the rock stars, the snipes are the roadies who keep the show running. In the engine room, the world is different. There are no windows. You can't see the horizon to orient yourself. When the ship rolls, the floor just drops out from under you. It is hot, over 100 degrees. The snipes have to monitor the steam pressure, the reactor coolant, and the electrical grid. If the ship lists too far, the oil in the lubrication sumps can slosh away from the pumps. If the bearings lose oil, the shaft sees. If the shaft sees, the propellers stop. So the snipes are constantly transferring fuel and water between tanks to trim the ship, using liquids as ballast to counteract the wind. It is a math problem that keeps them alive. And the most important tool for the captain is the aerographer. These are the Navy's weather forecasters. They sit in a dark room filled with satellite screens and radar feeds. Their job is to find the clean air. They advise the captain, "Sir, if we change course to 270, we can skirt the eye wall." But sometimes the mission requires the ship to be in the storm. If ground troops need air support or if a geopolitical crisis demands a presence, the carrier stays. This is blue water ops. There is no running away. We talk about machines, but ships are run by people, and people get seasick. In a violent storm, 30 to 50% of the crew might be incapacitated. Imagine trying to fix a radar while vomiting. Imagine trying to cook 17,000 meals while the kitchen floor is tilting. The smell below decks becomes awful. Diesel fumes, unwashed bodies, and vomit. The scullery, where they wash dishes, becomes a death trap of flying plates and scalding water. The berthing, sleeping quarters is a misery. You have to strap yourself into your bunk. If you don't, you get thrown out. Sailors use rack straps, seatbelts for beds. Sleep is impossible. The ship groans. It sounds like the steel is screaming. The propellers cavitate, they spin in air when the stern lifts out of the water, shaking the entire ship like a wet dog. This physical toll is matched by the mental toll. When the storm is bad, the captain might order River City. This is a communications blackout. The internet is cut. The phones are cut. Why? To keep bandwidth for operations or to prevent panic from leaking out. Sailors are cut off from their families. They are trapped in a steel box, rocking violently with no news from the outside world. It creates a sense of isolation that is hard to describe. For the new sailors, the Nuggets, this is their first time seeing the power of the ocean. They look out the portholes and see walls of water. They hear the announcements, "All hands secure for heavy seas, topside is restricted." It feels like being in a submarine. You are trapped, but the veterans, the chiefs, they walk around with coffee cups with lids and act like nothing is happening. Their calm is the only thing keeping the panic down. The worst thing that can happen in a storm isn't losing a jet, it's losing a sailor. Man overboard. If a blue shirt slips on the wet steel, if a gust of wind catches him, he slides under the safety nets and into the black water. In a storm, the rescue helicopters cannot fly. The small boats cannot launch. If you fall overboard in a hurricane, you are gone. The ship cannot turn around fast enough. The visibility is zero. This is why the buddy system is law. No one goes topside alone. They wear float coats, jackets with built-in life preservers and strobe lights. They wear cranials, helmets to protect their heads, but the ocean doesn't care about your PPE. Every sailor knows the story of those who were lost. It haunts the passageways. That is why when the storm hits, the camaraderie tightens. You watch your buddy's back. You check his chains. He checks yours. Eventually, the storm breaks. The sun comes out, but the work isn't over. It's just starting. Salt is the enemy. The storm has coated every inch of the jets in a layer of corrosive salt spray. If left alone, it will eat through the aluminum skin of the F-18s. It will destroy the stealth coating of the F-35s, so the fresh water washdown begins. The crew connects fire hoses to the freshwater system. They scrub the planes. They scrub the deck. It is a massive car wash for billion-dollar hardware. Mechanics open the panels. They check for leaks. Did water get into the avionics? Did the stress of the chains bend the landing gear? A jet might look fine, but if the internal frame is cracked from the G-forces of the storm, it is unsafe to fly. The air wing maintenance crews work for 48 hours straight to get the fleet back to mission-capable status. Because the enemy doesn't wait for you to dry off, the war goes on. There is a historical shadow that hangs over every storm. In December 1944, Admiral Halsey's Third Fleet was hit by Typhoon Cobra. They didn't have satellites. They didn't see it coming. The fleet sailed directly into the typhoon. 3 destroyers capsized and sank. Over 790 sailors died. Dozens of aircraft were washed off the light carriers. It was the US Navy's worst defeat of the war that didn't involve combat. That disaster changed everything. It created the modern weather protocols. It created the tie-down requirements. Every time a sailor cranks a chain tight today, they are doing it because of the ghosts of 1944. The US Navy is the only force on Earth that can park a floating city in a hurricane and keep fighting. China's carriers stay in port. Russia's carrier is usually being towed, but American carriers sail through the monster. This capability costs billions. It costs sweat. Sometimes it costs lives, but it sends a message to the world: we can operate anywhere, anytime, in any weather. The storm may be powerful, but the resolve of the American sailor is stronger. From the blue shirt hauling chains in the rain to the captain staring down a 50-foot wave, this is a machine made of steel and willpower. And the next time you see a storm warning on the news, remember, somewhere in the dark, in the middle of the ocean, there are 5,000 kids riding it out, keeping the watch so you can sleep safe. If this deep dive into the brutal reality of naval warfare opened your eyes, I need you to do 3 things right now. First, subscribe to the channel. We are building the most detailed military community on YouTube, and we want you in the formation. Second, smash that like button. It helps the algorithm show this video to more people who need to see the truth. Third, leave a comment below. I want to know, would you have the guts to stand on that flight deck in a hurricane? Type yes or no. And finally, if you think surviving a storm is hard, wait until you see what happens when the ship is under the water. Click the video on your screen right now to see the terrifying life aboard a nuclear attack submarine. It makes the aircraft carrier look like a vacation resort. Click it, and I'll see you there.